Now, the greatest radio shows of all time.
Suspense.
The Shadow Node.
Washington calling David Harding, counter-spy.
Classic radio theater.
The Great Gildersleeve.
Fibber McGee and Molly.
Dragnet. Gunsmoke.
The Lone Ranger.
Now, step back into a time machine with your host, Wyatt Cox.
Good evening, friends of the Inner Sanctum.
Screen star Dane Clark starring in Crime and Peter Chambers. This episode originally broadcast on August 3rd, 1954 on NBC, and the story about Rhonda Duffy's racehorse.
Crime and Peter Chambers. Created by Henry Kane, transcribed and starring Dane Clark. Private investigator, duly licensed and duly sworn, Peter Chambers.
You're a private eye. That's your business. Anything else? That's for laughs. It's a lazy summer's afternoon, and you've got your feet up on the office desk. And on the other side of the desk, there's another pair of feet. The latter belonging to the illustrious Detective Lieutenant Louis Parker, Homicide, New York City Police. Cop, gentleman, and good friend. Louis's got a day off, and he's taking a busman's holiday. He's spending it in the company of a private eye.
Well, let's get out somewhere, huh, kiddo? A little sunshine or something? Even Coney Island.
Yeah, I can just visualize you and me in the tunnel of love.
Oh, clever. All right, kidding aside, Pete. Now, we ain't going to spend the afternoon locked in your office talking shop, are we?
No, we ain't. If I can wangle it, we're going to be seated in a deluxe box at the racetrack screaming at the oat burners.
Great, fine. What do you mean, if you can wangle it?
Did you ever hear of Rhonda Duffy?
Rhonda. You mean the lady that owns Grey Dancer?
Yeah.
Supposed to be the best 3-year-old in America?
That's the one I mean.
Certainly I've heard of her, sure.
Well, she's due here any minute with Jackie Johnson, her jockey.
Her horse is running today, ain't he? At Belmont?
That he is.
Hey, what are you doing with these society swells?
Well, I tell you, look. Come in. Ah, Miss Duffy. How are you, Jackie?
Hi, Pete. And a pleasant good afternoon to you, Mr. Chambers.
Mrs. Rhonda Duffy, Miss Jackie Johnson. This is Lieutenant Louis Parker, best policeman in the whole city.
How do you do? Mr. Chambers, I don't know what Jackie here wants to see you about, but I do know it's personal.
Well, I was just
Oh,
leaving.
no, please, Lieutenant. As a matter of fact, I was intending to invite Mr. Chambers to the track today. Oh. My horse is running.
Well, thank you.
And I should love to include you, Lieutenant.
Well...
Unless you have something else.
No, I don't have a thing. I'd very much like to go.
Good, then suppose you and I leave now, Lieutenant. My car's downstairs. Jackie and Mr. Chambers can join us later, after they transact whatever business they have to transact.
That's okay by me, Mrs. Duffy.
Oh, come along, then. And don't keep him too long, Mr. Chambers. He's riding today.
I'll get him there on time.
Then I'll see you later on. You know my box number.
Yes, Mrs. Duffy, I do.
Bye, then.
Bye, Mrs. Duffy. Okay, Jackie. Where's the tight squeeze?
Meaning?
Meaning that when a guy wants to see a private eye, there's a tight squeeze somewhere.
Pete, you know Ralphie Butcher?
Ralphie Butcher. Hey, there can't be a tighter squeeze. What's between you and Ralphie?
$40,000.
Wow. And, you're overdue?
Yeah.
Ralphie Butcher, the toughest loan shark in the city, and you're overbought to him for $40,000. How come, Jackie?
When you play horses, Mr. Chambers, and I play horses, you hit a bad streak sometimes, see? And, brother, I really hit a bad one. I began to borrow and double up, and all of a sudden...
All of a sudden, you're way down deep in the hole, huh?
Yeah, 40 G's worth. Last night he told me, get it up. Get it up today or else.
And what can I do for you, Jackie?
Well, I want you to call him. Can you do that for me?
Sure, I can call him. Only what do you want me to tell him?
To lay off me today, that's all. Just lay off me today. Tonight I'll pay him. I'll pay him in full.
Well, I think that can be arranged. Now, let me see now. Ralphie Butcher, Oregon, 426. A couple of hours later, you're out in the brilliant sunshine in Rhonda Duffy's box at Belmont. Parker's there, Mrs. Duffy's there, and a tall guy with a little black beard who turns out to be, of all things, an undertaker's embalmer. Mrs. Duffy introduces him to you.
John Butler, Peter Chambers.
How do you do?
You know, fella, you're the first undertaker's embalmer I've ever met.
Really?
How's business?
Oh, I'm out of that now. Now I write verse for greeting cards.
Verse for greeting cards. Wasn't the embalming business better?
Yes, somewhat.
Why'd you quit?
My wife. Somehow my wife objected to that profession. Prior to that, I was a pickpocket.
What did you say?
Oh, no, you misunderstand. I was a pickpocket as an entertainer. You know, nightclub work, vaudeville.
Oh, yeah, I see.
You can relax, Louis. Relax.
Unfortunately, I was never really very lucky. Pickpocket, embalmer, greeting card, versifier, but I'm afraid I've never averaged more than $50 a week in my life.
So now you're playing the horses, huh?
Oh, no, indeed not. This is the first time I've been to a racetrack in my life.
You're kidding.
Honestly.
Then what brings you today?
Well, I'm a very good friend of Jackie Johnson.
Mrs. Duffy's jockey, huh?
Yes, that's right. He insisted that I come and watch him ride today, and, well, I acquiesced. I've known Jackie for years and years, but this is my very first time at a racetrack.
May I cut in on this very interesting conversation?
Louis, this is the first time this guy's been to a racetrack.
Yeah, he told me,
that?
Pete, take a gander. Over there.
The gander discloses in the very next box Ralphie Butcher. And seated beside him, a good-looking blonde in slacks and red blouse.
Mr. Butcher, big as life.
Oh, do you know Mr. Butcher, Lieutenant?
I know him slightly. Do you?
Oh, yes, he owns several excellent thoroughbreds. Mr. Butcher's a banker, lends money, that sort of thing.
Yeah, he lends money, all right.
Oh, do you know him too, Mr. Chambers?
I know him quite well.
The young lady with him is Katie Adams, works for me. Great Dance's trainer.
She's your trainer?
One of the few lady trainers in the business.
I think I'll stroll over and pay my respects to our banker friend.
Tell them to join us, Lieutenant.
All right, Mrs. Duffy, I will.
The next race is ours, Mr. Chambers. I'm awfully excited. See, I can't even open my bag for a cigarette.
Look out.
Oh! Look.
Easy does it, Mrs. Duffy. All you did was drop your bag.
Oh, but everything is scattered all over the place.
Well, just relax. Old Petey's the best picker-up in the business.
Oh, this is such a...
Hey, what's this? A switchblade knife.
Oh!
How incongruous can we get? A society lady with a switch knife in her purse.
Oh, it isn't as bad as it looks, Mr. Chambers. The knife belongs to my trainer, Katie Adams. She comes from the West where these things are legal. She found it in her trunk today and turned it over to me, and I shall bring it to a police precinct when we get out of here.
Excuse me.
Where are you going, Mr. Butler? That knife frighten you?
Oh, no, indeed. I'm just going to stretch my legs and perhaps wager a bob or two.
Well, good luck.
Thank you, my dear.
Well, how about you, Mrs. Duffy? Aren't you going to bet on your horse?
I've never made a wager in my life, Mr. Chambers, and in this case it would be practically taking their money. It's only a 3-horse race, and Grey Dancer has practically no competition.
Parker appears with Butcher and Katie Adams, and then John Butler comes back, and it's a real happy party. And pretty soon the horses dance out on the track. And Katie Adams, lady trainer, is most enthusiastic.
Look at the gorgeous horse, that old Grey Dancer. Look at Jackie sitting on him just like they were born for each other. And look at the prices on the tote board, which is just as it should be. Grey Dancer, 1 to 5. Tammy K, 40 to 1, and Pamela Ace, 99 to 1. This one's a walkover, that's what it is. Practically a walkover. There you go.
August 3rd, 1954, Crime and Peter Chambers on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Now on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, more of Crime and Peter Chambers, August 3rd, 1954.
But if it was a walkover, it was a walkover in reverse. Because dear old Gray Dancer came in last, absolutely last. The winner, Tammy Kay. Second, Pamela Ace. And a very poor last, the 1-to-5 shot, Gray Dancer. The figures on the tote board show that Tammy Kay pays $80. $80 for two. Wowee.
Brother, if ever I saw a jockey throw a race, that was it. First he holds him like he's going to tear his head off, and then he makes a grandstand play. Puts the whip to him when he hasn't got a ghost of a chance. Well, it's a good thing you don't wager, Mrs. Duffy, because...
Wager or not, I know when a crooked race is run. There was absolutely no excuse. Katie, I want Jackie here as soon as he's out of his silks. And if I have my way, he'll be out of his silks for good.
"20 minutes later, Jackie's out of his working clothes and in Mrs. Duffy's box, and he's giving off with more double talk than a stuttering ventriloquist dummy with amnesia.
Look, I just wouldn't run, Mrs. Duffy, that's all. I'm only a jockey, not a magician. Mrs. Duffy, I broke him last like I always do. You know he's no front runner. But when I come to make my move, he wouldn't move.
You held him. You wouldn't give him his head. It was obvious to everyone, and there must be 40,000 people here.
Look, Mrs. Duffy, right now there's another race, and there's a horse in it I'd like to bet on, so I'm going to make my bet. Then I'll be back here, and we'll discuss it further. And if you want to bring charges against me, it's okay with me. I'll be glad to leave it up to the stewards. But right now, I'm going to make my bet.
There's an exodus from that box as though a plague had struck. Rhonda Duffy says she's heading for the stewards, and Katie Adams says she's heading for a bite of late lunch. The rest of them, including Parker, are heading for the seller's windows to do what you're supposed to do at a racetrack, bet on horses. There are 15 horses in the next race, so you do the old tic-tac-toe and you make a selection yourself. The crowd is tremendous. You push and you get pushed. And then you see another type of crowd, an excited ring of people. And when you get there, Parker's already there, stooped over a body. And the body's that of Jackie Johnson.
He was in that crowd at the $50 window, and suddenly he dropped. Somebody stuck a knife into him.
You helped carry him to the clubhouse, and there it's definitely established. He's dead. And he was murdered. And now you and Parker are working at your trade. The knife in his back is a switch knife that was in Mrs. Duffy's bag, no question, which limits our suspects to the people who had been in that box. Parker herds them all into the clubhouse and grills them. And the last one is Katie Adams.
Now, look, Katie, you knew Jackie pretty well. What kind of a guy was he?
A no good guy.
Enemies?
Plenty.
Friends?
I'd say he had only one real friend. That Mr. Butler. You met him, John Butler. I'd say Butler was the only guy Jackie ever really trusted.
All right, Katie, thank you. You can go outside with the rest of them.
Yeah.
Pete, what do you think?
Well, the only ones who could have managed it were the ones who could have gotten to that knife. Mrs. Duffy, Butcher, Butler, and Katie. And we haven't got a thing on any one of them that could hold them.
Well, let's give it a run through. Huh? Mrs. Duffy?
Well, doesn't figure for a motive. She doesn't seem to be the kind of a person who would kill a guy just because he lost a horse race.
What about Butcher?
Well, it's like I told you, Louie. Jackie owed him 40 G's. There wasn't going to be any pressure until tonight. Jackie promised to pay by then. The guy'd be crazy to kill him when he's been promised the money by tonight.
John Butler?
According to them, he was his only friend. What reason would he have to stick a knife into him?
And Katie Adams?
No motive that I can see. Strictly a business acquaintance. Trainer of horses.
Can't hold one of them. Haven't got a thing on any of them.
Anything else I can do here, Louie?
Thanks, Pete. Not a thing.
Look, you've got work to do here. I'll meet you in the paddock when you're through.
Yeah, okay.
And outside, the first guy that buttonholes you is John Butler.
Any developments, Mr. Chambers?
No, not a one.
I think I'd better call home.
Oh?
My wife hasn't been feeling well lately, and I promised her... My word.
What's the matter?
I seem to be out of change.
Well, here's some coins.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Then you find Mrs. Rhonda Duffy seated at a clubhouse table, lapping up scotch like there's no tomorrow. Parker comes out and joins you, and you order a round of drinks for everybody. Parker mashes a hand across his face, and he sighs.
Oh, this one's a real humdinger.
That it is.
What happened to Kitty?
She's out at the stables, Lieutenant. She's been very much affected by all of this.
Why is she special?
Well, it was her knife. In some complex manner, she blames herself for what happened.
Maybe it ain't so complex at that.
I don't understand, Lieutenant.
Well, look, Mrs. Duffy, we've got a limited number of suspects. The weakest one in the chain is your Katie Adams.
But why?
Well, let's put it this way. The two weakest links were you and Katie. But I checked with the stewards, and you were with them at the time of the killing. That eliminates you.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
Now, wait a minute. No offense is meant, Mrs. Duffy. Lieutenant Parker is just working at his job.
Of course he is. I'm sorry, Lieutenant.
It's all right. The point is that we have excellent reason to believe that Mr. Butcher wanted Jackie alive. Very, very much alive. And from what everyone told us, including you and Katie, Butler was a dear friend of Jackie's. Who does that leave us, Mrs. Duffy?
But Katie, I mean...
Katie Adams.
I can't believe it.
Mrs. Duffy, would there be any was there any relationship between Katie and Jackie Johnson?
Well, it was a long time ago.
Please tell us, Mrs. Duffy. Any little point might help.
Well, they were interested in one another, but that was, at least a year ago.
You mean a serious friendship?
Well, Katie thought so. But then, well, she wasn't actually jilted. It was just that Jackie found a new interest.
She take it bad?
For a time, but only for a short time. After a while, she realized that it was all for the best, that Jackie was, well, a rather frivolous type.
What do you think, Pete?
Well, from a psychological viewpoint, I think no. A lady doesn't wait a year to suddenly vent her spleen.
Well, let me ask you this, Mrs. Duffy. How long has she been with you?
2 years.
And how come she picked today to give you that knife?
She had it in a trunk, which she keeps here. She was doing a bit of cleaning when she came across it. She realized that in this state it's illegal to own such a knife, and she gave it to me. I wouldn't exactly say she picked today to give it to me.
Louis, I still think you're barking up the wrong tree.
Well, how about that other tree which is approaching John Butler?
Oh, I'm glad I found you. I want to thank you for your hospitality, Mrs. Duffy.
Not at all.
And in the circumstances, I must sound like an awful oaf, but I must go home now.
Something wrong?
Yes, indeed there is.
Urgent, Mr. Butler?
Extremely so. My wife has been ill. I've called home. Thank you for your coins, Mr. Chambers.
That's quite all right.
It seems that she has taken a turn for the worse. Lieutenant Parker, we're under no restraint, are we? Any of us?
No, of course not.
Then if you'll excuse me.
Just a minute, Mr. Butler, just a minute.
Yes?
I've got something to show you.
Something to show me? What is it?
What you show him is a bunched up fist. But he's a strong one, and he stands up under the punch. But then you work his arm around behind him in a hammerlock, and you've got him, but good.
Hey, what the heck is going on here?
Grab a look in his pockets, Louis.
Pete, do you know what
Grab
you're
a
doing?
look, I told you.
Okay, all right.
Stand still, you monkey.
What do you know?
What do you got?
Harry Mutual tickets. A lot of them. For a lot of dough. For that big race, the Great Dancer race. Except these are for number 2 and number 3, Tammy Kay and Pamela H.
Let's hustle this guy inside where we can have some privacy.
You talked me into it, sweetheart.
Come on, you. Inside, further privacy is assured by Parker, pointing his .38 at the crestfallen butler, who's as limp as a rag doll in the rain. The good Mrs. Duffy's eyes bulge as you count up the Mutual tickets.
How much, Pete?
$2,000 worth on Tammy Kay and $2,000 worth on Pamela Ace.
$4,000 worth.
Yeah.
You know, this monkey never saw $4,000 in one lump in his whole life.
Well, one set is useless, the set on Pamela Ace. But the batch on Tammy K, that horse paid 40 to 1, and he holds $2,000 worth of tickets.
Representing in sum $80,000. Can you explain any of this, Mr. Chambers?
You betcha, Mrs. Duffy.
And the explanation follows these words from your favorite station. August 3rd, 1954, Crime and Peter Chambers on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox.
You ever make a change and then think, why didn't I do this years ago? Well, that's how people feel about switching to Medishare for their health care, especially now with inflation the way it is. People are very happy with the savings. Most families save about $500 a month when they switch. It's a huge help when prices are going up so fast in so many other areas. And Medishare's customer satisfaction rate is double that of health insurance. It's just a different experience, and people really like that. Medishare is an alternative to health insurance. It's a community of Christians who share each other's healthcare bills, and it's been going strong for over 25 years. It really is the gold standard, the most trusted name in healthcare sharing. Find out why people love it, find out why they rave about the customer service, and find out how good it feels to save some money right now. They're super easy to talk to. Here's the number, 833-34-BIBLE. That's 833-34-BIBLE, 833-34-BIBLE.
Now on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, the conclusion of Crime and Peter Chambers starring Dane Clark, August 3rd, 1954.
And you, Butler, correct me if I go astray.
Unbelievable. Utterly fantastic.
We start with Jackie Johnson, who needed a pile of money and who needed it tonight.
But why?
He got tangled up with a certain banker by the name of Butcher, otherwise known as a loan shark.
I knew he was in trouble when he wanted to see you, but I didn't know what his trouble was.
Little Jackie dreamed himself up a Lulu, a 3-horse race with 2 tremendous long shots, and he's riding the cinch favorite.
Oh, it's beginning to come to me.
Jackie trusted this John Butler. He got together $4,000 and he talked Butler into coming to the racetrack for the first time in his life. And he pumped him full of instructions.
Meaning that Butler was to bet $2,000 on each of the other horses in the race.
And Jackie holds back on the Gray Dancer.
Huh?
And any way you look at it, he's got to win a fortune. Only little Jackie didn't figure on human nature. John Butler suddenly stopped running to form.
Yeah, happens with horses and with people.
It's my guess, Mrs. Duffy, that the idea came to him when he saw that knife fall out of your handbag.
Oh.
Is that correct, Mr. Butler?
Yes. Yes, that's correct. You mean it came to him that with Jackie out of the way, he had $80,000 in his kick, and nobody could say it wasn't his.
And those pari-mutuel tickets are as good as cash?
He used to be a pickpocket for entertainment. And this time he did it for real. He clipped a knife out of Mrs. Duffy's bag the first opportunity he had, and in that crowd at the seller's window, he shoved it into Jackie's ribs.
But how? I mean, how did you know?
He gave himself away.
What? How do you
He wanted to get away from there, Louis. He was afraid the investigation might go a step further. He might be searched, and he had those tickets on his person.
Yeah.
So, he figured out a reasonable method. As it happens, his reasoning turned out to be a trap.
I don't quite understand, Mr. Chambers.
He went off to telephone his wife, and he came back with the story that she was ill and that he had to go home, all very rational, all very normal, except for one great big hitch.
Hitch?
He couldn't have spoken to his wife or anybody else at his home.
But why not?
He was unfamiliar with racetracks. That's where he trapped himself.
Oh, come on, I get to the point, Petey.
There are no public telephones at the racetrack. That's the point.
Oh, but of course not.
Nice work.
He couldn't have called his wife, and he couldn't have spoken to her. When he broached the subject, I gave him some coins, and I waited. He was either going to clear himself or hang himself.
And he hanged himself.
You can bet on that, Mrs. Duffy. And that won't be a wager.
And there you've had Crime and Peter Chambers. Clark was starred as Peter Chambers. Crime and Peter Chambers, transcribed, was created and written by Henry Kane. Others in the cast were Bill Zuckert, heard as Lieutenant Parker, Abby Lewis as Mrs. Duffy, and Donald Buca as Butler. It was directed by Fred Way. This is Fred Collins inviting you to tune in next week, same time, same station, for Dane Clark in Crime and Peter Chambers.
August 3rd, 1954, Crime and Peter Chambers on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. All right, let's wrap up another yours truly Johnny Dollar story. This is part 5 of the 5-part story, The Sea Legs Matter. This episode originally broadcast August 3rd, 1956, and it appears that Johnny and Oscar, of course Oscar, played by Parley Bear, find themselves in a little bit of a problem.
From Hollywood, it's time now for
Johnny Dollar.
This is Capitan Ramirez in Bluefield.
Hello, Captain. Thanks for returning my call.
Oh, you are now in San Juan del Perro?
Yeah.
Soon you will know Nicaragua as well.
Yeah, listen, Captain, I need your help. Can you get a plane down here for me? The one we brought has been wrecked.
Oh, si, Senor Dollar.
And if I were you, I'd come along with it.
I, senor? But
A nice chance to add to your laurels, Captain, by making a couple of arrests.
Criminal?
Yeah. One of them a killer.
Tonight and every weekday night, Bob Bailey in the transcribed adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account. America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. From Special Investigator Johnny Dollar, location San Juan del Perro, Nicaragua, to Universal Adjustment Bureau, Hartford, Connecticut. Following is a final accounting of expenses and report on my investigation of the Sea Legs matter. Expense account item 18, $1 American. Phone call to Captain Jose Ramirez of the Federal Maritime... I still can't spell it. Call it the Coast Guard. But a lot of things happened before I could make that call. Like the fast plane trip that we made to San Juan del Perro in the hope of finding the yacht, the Sea Legs, despite a big insurance claim based on its alleged loss at sea. Like the fact that our plane was wrecked for us by one Douglas Landfair, despite a big claim based on his alleged death at sea. Like our discovery of the yacht, carefully altered and repainted in an old shipyard. Our discovery of Ramon Gonzalez, a member of the crew who was supposed to have gone down with her.
Come on, Mr. Dollar, let's get out of here.
Oh, no, Oscar. Not until I revive this Gonzalez character and make him talk.
But he may have a friend around.
Quite right, Oscar, he has.
Huh?
And with a gun aimed straight at Mr. Dollar's back.
Well, well. Connie Landfair.
Surprise, Johnny?
Not particularly.
Stand still. I won't hesitate to pull this trigger.
No, I guess you wouldn't.
So you found the Sea Legs. Or did Oscar help you?
Oh, then you're familiar with Oscar Patrick Vladimir Pasquero.
Ask him, the chiseling, money-grabbing...
Please, how can you say such a thing about such a
Oh,
sterling...
shut up, Oscar.
Thank you.
Nice job you did of disguising the Sea Legs, Mrs. Landfair.
If Oscar hadn't shown you where to find it, my husband and I would have it out to sea again. And new clothes under a new flag.
Oh, yeah, sure. One of the oldest games in the business. And in the meantime, you would have collected $150,000 on its supposed loss, in addition to $250,000 on your husband, Douglas.
Why did you have to come along, Johnny?
I'm afraid you asked for it when you filed your claims. $400,000.
We had to. We were in trouble.
Oh, sure, because you spent every nickel you could get your hands on.
No. We inherited the estate. I told Douglas that
Oh,
we should
yeah,
try
sure. All his fault.
It's true.
Well, that ain't the way I heard it. And I don't intend to believe it any more than I believe a couple of things you told me on the plane down here.
You don't understand.
Nobody has to lie. But remember how you sobbed as you told about the last radio contact with your husband when, as you put it, you could hear the rocks grinding away at the hull and the water pouring in overside as he desperately fought for his life?
Johnny, please.
Well, I heard it a little different from Oscar here. The radio signal was suddenly cut off, that's all. No fancy sound effects, nothing.
Oscar told you that?
And what rocks, by the way, that smashed the Sea Legs? I flew out to the Baldero Islands and tried to find them. They were as non-existent as the wreckage that should have washed ashore on the Baldero Current.
I'm beginning to see some things, Johnny.
The maid or skipper or whatever you want to call him, who was supposed to have been with your husband, had been lost with a boat, Ramon Gonzalez. Well, as you can see, he wasn't quick enough when he attacked us here a minute ago, and I had to get a little rough with him.
Johnny.
As for your having a gun pointing at my back, stop kidding, Connie. You know more.
Johnny, look out!
Kill me.
Wait a minute,
He was going to kill you, Mr. Dollar, but you were too good for him.
Well, a lot of help you were. That his knife?
Huh? Oh, yes, here.
I think I'd better have it, Oscar, because, well, I see Connie Lanfear made a hasty exit from the scene.
She did? Well, what do you know about that?
You didn't see her leave?
Well, it's so dark in this old shipyard, and I was so worried about you, dear Mr. Dollar. Why don't
You
we
should
get
be. Plenty worried.
Huh? Look, why don't we get out?
I needed only two things when I came down here, Oscar. Proofs, both of them.
Why don't we get out of this dreary place, Mr. Dollar, and talk someplace else, huh? Where there's light.
Oh, shut up and listen.
Thank you.
I found them both now. Proof that Douglas Lanfear never died in the wreck of the Sea Legs, and proof that the Sea Legs was never wrecked at all. Except for a couple of details, the case is closed. One of those details is you.
Me? You mean paying me for all the unvaluable help I've been... Oh, how nice. I'll take it in 20s if you...
Oscar, I'm going to lay the cards right on the table.
And the money? I'll find the table.
Now listen to me. Connie Lanfear slipped away during our little ruckus here. But you could have stopped her as easily as you could have stopped this Gonzalez character from jumping me.
She said she had a gun.
A bluff. She didn't. But you did.
Me? Oh, Mr. Dollar, I would be scared.
Spotted that bulge under your left arm the minute you appeared in my hotel room that first morning. Well, don't reach for it because I'm carrying one too.
Mr. Dollar, dear, I don't understand.
Well, I do now. I've wondered from the beginning just why you insisted on sticking so close to me from the minute I arrived here in Nicaragua.
All right. I will tell you the truth. The whole truth, even if it costs me a small, slight percentage of the munificent fees you're going to pay me for the unestimable assistance I have been giving you.
Oscar, you just won't give up, will you?
The money. That's what it is, the money. Like I get from all the Americans who come here to Nicaragua. Only from you it was not for sightseeing, guiding, but for all the help.
Like, for instance, the money you've been getting from the Lanfears?
I cannot tell a lie, Mr. Dollar. I did get some money from Mr. and Mrs. Lanfear, you know, for various and Sunday services when first they came here. But why not? Including the use of my radio sender. You see, if I hadn't known they would pay me well for the using of my radio...
Your unlicensed radio.
My unlicensed radio, because a license costs too much. Why, I would never have been able to know about the wreck that didn't happen and so skillfully lead you to the Baldara Islands and all the clues that I... Yeah, well, you know what I mean.
What you really mean, Oscar, is that you expected a lot more from them if their crazy plan to collect on the insurance policies worked out.
You're sure? Because no, Mr. Dollar. No, I was only trying to help you. Think, Mr. Dollar, about all the things I've told you about.
You were careful not to tell me a single thing that I wouldn't have learned anyway.
Oh, Mr. Dollar.
Why did you insist right off the bat that we fly to Puerto Gardo, for instance?
Why, of course.
Apparently to help me for a small pittance, of course. But actually it was to keep me out of the way while Constant Lanfear made contact with her husband here in San Juan del Perro.
No, please,
No doubt you worked that all out with her before you busted in on me that first morning. Then when we did get to Puerto Gardo, tried to prevent me from spotting the current that would have taken any wreckage from the islands and washed it ashore on the sandbar at Puerto Gardo, if the Sea Legs had gone down.
That isn't... No. I told you about that strong current and where it went to.
Sure you did. But only because you realized at that point that I couldn't help finding out about it anyway.
Mr. Dollar, you're making a crook out of me.
Making a crook of you? Well, I had this little item, Oscar. When we started to land our plane and Douglas Lanfear came at us with his car, you know as well as I do that you could have avoided it. Kept us from snapping off our landing gear and crashing. Oh, it was nicely done, too. So that you wouldn't get badly hurt, but still be up and around to collect from Lanfear for it.
Oh, Mr. Dollar, how can you even implicate such a horrible thing? You, my dearest, my undying
Because
friend.
of your little suggestion along the way that I unfastened my seatbelt and relaxed, while you, I noticed, kept yours tight. One thing after another. And finally, of course, armed as you are, you not only let Gonzalez attack me, but you let Connie Lanfear escape as well. And all for money. Money. That's all you've talked about. How did you figure to collect for all this?
All right. It's true. It's true. All my life, in every country in the world, I've been... Whatever I have done has been because I love money. But I swear it, Mr. Dollar. I would have never let them kill you. Because I do like you, Mr. Dollar. I almost... Even with all the money I could get from them, I almost gave it up.
Yeah, for whatever you could get from me.
Yes. And because you're such a nice man, I guess I'm not used to being around nice... Mr. Dollar.
Well?
Mrs. Lanphier.
What about her?
Don't be too hard on her. It was all his doings. He had such a strong hold over her. The way he treated her, sometimes I almost thought she wished he had gone down in a wreck of the boat.
What are you talking about? She's still in it.
Because by now she's so far in, she has to stick with him. Don't you see?
Oh, yeah, I suppose that does make sense. All right, what else?
Yeah, that's all. I have opened up my whole entire heart.
Well...
Mr. Dollar, for once in my life, I'm telling the truth. I thought maybe I could persuade you to pay me more than they could. Then I could be on your side, on the good side, just for once. But now I guess I can only beg for your mercy.
One thing you haven't told me, where Douglas Lanphier is. You must know. Well, do you?
Yes.
Well?
For maybe enough of a small pittance to get out of this country.
Can't get over it, can you? Well, you haven't much of a choice this time.
You will help me maybe just a little bit if I tell you.
We'll see.
I'm living on hope, Mr. Dollar, so I will tell you. Mr. Lanphier.
Mr. Lanphier is right here.
Oh.
And well-armed, Oscar, and ready to blow your brains out for what you just told this nosy insurance investigator.
Be careful, please.
Mr. Dollar, he has a gun.
Yeah, I see. So have you, Oscar.
Yes. Yes, I have.
Careful, Oscar.
And if it is the last thing I do, the man who got me into this is going...
Oh, no, you don't!
No! Oh,
So, it was after that I called Captain Ramirez of the Federal Maritimes. Someday I'll learn that word. And let him take charge. Extradition proceedings for Connie are underway. The U.S. courts will have to take over with her. And Doug Lanphier's body is being shipped to the States. Oscar's body? Well, I left some money with Captain Ramirez for a decent burial. Expense account total, $841.95. Remarks? I wonder what kind of a deal Oscar Patrick Vladimir Pasquero was able to make at the pearly gates, or wherever he was headed. And you know something? I kind of hope it was a pretty... Well, at least I hope it wasn't too bad a deal. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Next week, the promise of romance in the arms of a lovely girl, and the threat of a knife in the back. Join us, won't you? Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, starring Bob Bailey, is transcribed in Hollywood. It is produced and directed by Jack Johnstone, who also wrote this week's story. Heard in our cast were Harry Bartell, Lawrence Dobkin, Virginia Gregg, Parley Bear, Don Diamond, and Russell Thorson. Musical supervision by Amerigo Marino.
From August 3rd, 1956, yours truly, Johnny Dollar, here on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. I want to once again thank my good friend Ted over at RadioMemories.com for providing us with this particular series of yours truly, Johnny Dollar, The Sea Legs Matter. Ted has all sorts of great shows you can find on cassette, CD, or flash drive through his website, radiomemories.com. That is radiomemories.com. Tell him I sent you by, won't you please?
This is Debbie Reynolds. If you've been wondering what you can do to fight communism personally from your own home, there is something you can do. Support Radio Free Europe, the station built and financed by the contributions of the American public to the crusade for freedom. Radio Free Europe is one Cold War operation the communists fear and attack constantly. Support Radio Free Europe. Send your truth dollars to Crusade for Freedom, care of your local postmaster.
I know Jed's going to love hearing that. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day. Would you thank this radio station and support their advertisers? It's their kindness and courtesy that allows us to be with you each and every time you roll around here on your favorite radio station. And if you miss a day, you do not have to miss a single show. You can hear our shows on demand by going to my webpage, classicradio.stream. That's classicradio.stream. There you can stream our shows on demand. You can learn about building a classic radio collection of your own. You can also find links to other podcast applications that carry our shows, so you can put them on your phone if you like. You can also contact me, find our social media links, and if you really enjoy our shows, you can buy me a coffee. By using the Buy Me a Coffee app, it also helps us acquire new and better great old-time radio shows, either upgraded sound quality, rare shows that we don't have in our collection, all sorts of great upgrades. So if you could do that, it'd be greatly appreciated. Classicradio.stream, classicradio.stream. Thanks for listening. Thank this station. Support the advertisers. Tell your friends. Great radio shows are right here at this spot on the dial. Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite station.